Hello, I'm Dr. Frances Yahia, and today I want to talk to you about codependency and how you can find your codependency, addictions, and delusional sort of metaphor in your chart. So first, let's talk about that we're just coming out of the era of Pisces. So over 2,000 years where our psyche is set up to seek a savior. This does not matter what your religious inclination is. This is a mythology that is rooted in all of our collective unconscious. So if you're in the Western world, your psyche is set up as the Western world. And the major mythology has been the story of Jesus. So we're all set up to want to either be a savior or a rescuer or a martyr and save someone or have someone save us. So this is the way that it's rooted in our psyche. So the first thing that we need to do is we have to find our Neptune. We have to find any planets in Pisces, and we have to find any cusp that is in Pisces. So in this person's chart, they have Neptune at 17 degrees and their sun at 10 degrees. Therefore, this is a conjunction. It's within 10 degrees. And Neptune is going to be a tendency for codependence, for addiction, for delusion, what I call the snow globe of illusion or delusion. And it's going to be a savior archetype. So anywhere that you have Neptune, especially if it's close to one of your major luminaries, the sun or the moon, or if your ascendant is in Pisces, you're going to be specifically programmed for savior complex and codependent relationships. It's going to be something difficult. From a deadly sin perspective, it is the sin of gluttony. Gluttony doesn't have to do with food, although it can absolutely manifest as overweight or excessive eating. It's actually gluttonous in terms of thought. So Neptune rules all of the oceans, and think of the oceans. The oceans are only limited by the earth, by boundaries. And so that's how the mind of a codependent, of an addict, of someone in Al-Anon who is the savior to the addict, someone that has a lot of Pisces placements, and we all have Pisces somewhere by cusp, we all have Neptune. It's just multifaceted or layered even stronger if you happen to be like it. For instance, I have a Pisces sun, a Pisces Venus, a Pisces Mercury. And so in addition to that, a Neptune in my first touching my ascendant, and then a Neptune cusp on my fourth. So the chart is set up, yes, to do psychology and spirituality, but it's also very much set up for the shadow aspect of Neptune in Pisces, which is codependence and addiction. And my past, I would be in codependent relationships, or I would attract addicts even though I have no addictions. So it's the savior complex that's the addiction. So it does not have to live itself out in a visible addiction of drug, alcohol, or food. Codependence is an addiction. Savior complex is an addiction. So whatever the placement of Neptune is going to be, that's going to be your first thing. What's the proximity to Neptune, to your sun and to your moon? In this person's case, it's far away from the moon, so it's really just layering the sun. So if the sun is the masculine or the rational aspect of the person's mind, then it's going to be layered to perhaps attract in the 11th house close friends that are Pisces, friends or community groups that have to do with saving, savior, rescuing, martyring. And within this, the 11th house being a social house, it could be attracting codependent relationships or working with groups that are prone to addiction or codependence. If it's coloring your moon, it's going to be more of an emotional concept. The moon in Pisces represents the person's psyche, that they view their mother as the universal mother. So let me just remind you, when you are in the womb, and everybody's moon sign talks about the emotional connection in the moon, it is a shadow love language. No moon is a healthy moon. Pisces happens to be one of the most unhealthiest moons because as the child is in the in the womb state, and they think that it's perfection, they're actually thinking that their mother, their womb, is not only just the personal, but rather the universal. So Moon in Pisces has a very strong tendency to go into codependent relationships, because their psychology is, my mother is all mothers. My mother is the great mother archetype. So on top of that, even if you don't have a Moon in Pisces, but if you have a Neptune conjunct or a Neptune in aspect to the Moon, this is going to give an added layer. The next thing we look at is Pisces by cusp. In this person's chart, they have Neptune or Pisces on the second house cusp. What this means is the second house is what we value and how we spend our money. This person is going to have a view of their self-worth in a Piscean way. So Neptune in the second, or Pisces in the second, is codependent because I have low self-worth. I am the doormat. Therefore, I have no value if I am not saving. And then the money is going to be perhaps misused and misallocated, because I don't want to attach my self-worth to material. It's the antithesis, so to speak, of the spiritual. So this brings me to another myth of how our Western psychology or our Western mind is structured. Back in the day, Poseidon or Neptune was at odds with Athena, and they went to Greece and they called in all of the commoners of the town so that they could name the town. Poseidon or Neptune offered a spring, waters. Athena offered an olive branch, material goods. Obviously, the city is called Athens. Athena won. The material world is set up with a material foundation. Material earthly consciousness is preferred over the Eastern world and has more of a spiritual or spiritual consciousness, if you will. Neither one is better than the other. We need both. But if we have a very strong presence of Neptune, for instance, in this person's chart, that's conjunct the sun, and on top of that, the value house of her self-worth in Pisces or Neptune, then what this says is my self-worth comes from a spiritual, or what I call a transcendent concept. And so we devalue the material or the earthly. This could lead to bodily illnesses if we're living only in the higher chakras, or what we believe to be the transcendence, and we're not fully embodied. Of course, the savior complex, addictions, rescuer, martyr, and codependent relationships now become to give you the self-worth. What we need is a balance of the consciousness. The Western world, the material consciousness, because money is absolutely important. It pays our bills, buys our food, and puts a roof over our head, and the spiritual consciousness. People that tend to have too much Pisces influence in their chart, or Neptune influence in their chart, tend to go more into what I call the pain as pleasure function, or want to be transcendent in their function, and they need to come down into the body. Those that have less of this impact might have more material or tribal functions, being in the body more, and need to balance that earthly material consciousness with more spirituality. But really, the East needs the West, and the West needs the East. As Westerners, our psyche is set up to either hate, let's say, the earthly consciousness, the body, the money, the desires, the pleasures of the flesh. So then we go into the other extreme of the spiritual nature or the transcendent, leaving the body, or we're set up to really love the pain and suffering because we view it as, spiritual or more Jesus-like. And then we struggle with the material and the earthly consciousness, and we need both. So this is another place. Now, this person happens to have the South Node in Pisces. So not only is there a Neptune influence with the sun, Now the cusp of the second house is in Pisces. Now the south node is in Pisces. The south node is comfortable sign from past lives. The qualities of the sign are very easy. We're here to become our north node. So if she's very comfortable in a Piscean, codependent, addictive, martyr, savior role, you can see that it will be a struggle for this particular person to sort of move in that direction. And then lastly, we can check for decanates if we have any planets in the decanate of Neptune. In her case, she's got Uranus in Scorpio in the second decanate, which would be the Neptune decanate. So her Uranus, even though it's in Scorpio, has a tinge of the decanate of Neptune, adding an additional layer to her Piscean or codependent type. The second cusp of the second house is also in the Neptune decanate. Again, you start seeing multiple affirmations in the chart that this is someone who leans towards codependent, savior complex, rescuer, martyr, addictions, and finding her self-worth linked to what she can offer in terms of having low self-worth, but being codependent. So if you do a combined chart, you can also see if the relationship tends to be codependent with how much Pisces or where Pisces is. The biggest placements are going to be the sun, the moon, and the ascendant. So this particular person doesn't have any planets in Pisces, so there's nothing necessarily to look at aspects. But if we were going to do aspects, let's just say from the south node, it's in Pisces, it's aspecting her Mars, it's a square, it's aspecting her Neptune, it's a square, it's aspecting her Mercury is a square. So now we see that this aspect of Pisces is also aspecting negatively these three planets, which is the way she thinks, already her delusional victim, codependent tendency archetype, and the way that she's going to sort of fight her war. So we also now layer on squares and oppositions. Again, I don't use the south node for squares and oppositions, but just to illustrate, she's got the south node in Pisces, which would be opposite her Saturn. So this would be sort of like an inner struggle and an outer struggle, because oppositions are always external manifestations of what's happening in the mind. So if she needs to alchemize, becoming more Virgo, more discerning, more boundary, more in terms of jurisprudence, then all of this water, all of this Neptune, all of this global thinking, all of this universal mother concept, great mother concept is going to be challenged, specifically with the Saturn, which is the planet of karma, in the chart in the 8th house. So something will have to die, so to speak, or she'll have to confront her Hydra or her shadows so that she can try to begin to overcome her tendency of codependence. Thank you.